And we are live for the First Strike podcast, back after a 2-week break. But before we start the show, I'm going to plug our sponsor, FaceToFaceGames.com, the number one place to start to buy your Magic the Gathering singles. This week, different weekly sale. It's not Magic. You get 15% off all your Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh singles. So if you guys are also playing that game, then make sure you check that out. Check that Facebook page every week for the next weekly special. Tonight, full house. I'm back on the show as well, away from doing these player interviews at MagicFest Toronto. Full house. Got Andy, Derek, Elliot, and John in the house with lots of stories. And let's just get right to them, and we'll talk about some recent YC announcement and our first take on how we feel about them. But let's go straight to Friday, where we've been talking about how the Mythic Championship qualifiers are a very good idea for you to play, and that if you just fly to MagicFest, you should consider playing the one on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Andy, you decided to play the one on Friday. Modern played the deck you've been touting, so you backed up your word. Is it Phoenix? And you made top 8. So tell us quickly about the tournament itself.
So it was a smaller PTQ for one of these events. I think it was only 160, 150 players. So I easily wound up 4-0 with this busted Is It Phoenix deck. And then I was lucky enough to draw into the top 8. And then I don't even remember really what I played. I think everyone was just at such a horrible playing field compared to my deck. And then in the first round of top 8, I played against Jeskai Control. And I just remember winning game 1 when it felt like they didn't do anything. And then game 2, I spell pierced them and took the absolute life away from my opponent. They couldn't believe that I had such a card in my deck after not playing anything for like 3 turns. And so I spell pierced them, and then I 16'd them. No. I 16'd them the turn after. They tapped out for a Teferi. And then they died very easily after that. And then I was dispatched by John Stern in top 4, where I think if a couple things break my way, I win both those games pretty handily if I just draw a little bit better. But alas, I did not, and I lost 2-0 to John Stern. But obviously a worthy opponent to lose to. And it at least helped me solidify that I was 100% just going to play that at the GP. Not that I was really considering anything else, but it gave me some good ideas of what I would want to change for my list and what I felt like was important for the GP.
The top 8 ended up being a variety of decks as well. John, Mono Green Tron, played against Hardened Scales in the finals. I think it was fun to sweat that match with I mean, Elliot wasn't there for the finals, but for the top 4 match, it was fun to sweat that. Elliot decided to play Burn. It seems that every pilot of Is It Phoenix that I talked to say it's one of the decks that they would dislike to face the most. But Elliot, your result at the same qualifier was rather poor, right?
Yeah, so I played Burn, and I wasn't lucky enough to play against Is It Phoenix. I kept on playing against people who had main deck life gain spells. And the first time a creature I controlled got Lightning Helixed or my Dredge opponent hit a Creeping Chill, it felt like I was just completely disqualified from the game and unable to win. So I had a pretty disappointing result. I didn't even win any packs. So I scrambled that night to assemble an Is It Phoenix deck. Shout out to the people who helped me build it. And so I audible to that.
You audible to that, and you ended up going 6-3 on day 1 of the main event, whereas Andy had a blazing start. Andy, like again, you're just crushing. Your record with this deck is exceptional.
Yeah, I started 8-0 and then lost to a friend of the podcast, Marcus Thibault, for 9-0. And honestly, his draw was one of the best draws I've ever seen a Tron deck do. It was just. Obviously, he kept a very good hand, but it was just all naturals that if he didn't draw, he went turn 3 Karn, turn 4 Ugin, turn 5 World Breaker, turn 6 Ulamog, and if any of those cards are different, I win. I could beat any of them except the Ulamog at the end. So, and like that also says that I drew very well, but like one of my best draws, I couldn't believe I lost. And then kind of there, I won 2 in a row on day 2 and started to crap the bed from there on out.
You think it was lack of good draws, or did you face poor matchup? Well, what's the Tron matchup? It's close overall, in your opinion?
I would say the Tron matchup is about just a complete coin flip. Like, you're very fast, but they can go over the top of you. You have a bit of reach, and sometimes they can get out of your reach. So it's just a very close matchup. It's just very close.
And day 2 you fizzled out, whereas Elliot, you decided to play a Mythic Wildfire on Sunday, and you top 8'd. So backing Is It Phoenix has to be one of the best decks in the format.
Yeah. So when I was 6-3 in the main event, I figured, to have a good result from there, I needed to like 5-0 or 5-1 or something like that. So I figured I might as well test my luck in the PTQ if I needed to win 5 matches. And I strung it together. I think I played, a few good matchups on my way there and got lucky against Ad Nauseam in my win and in, but ended up falling to the 4-color Word deck in the top 8. It's definitely like the weak point of the Is It Phoenix deck, because it just has such a huge trouble against both Ensnaring Bridge and Chalice of the Void out of the Word deck. I kind of talked on Twitter a bit with some people who were posting their thoughts after the tournament, and just think, maybe if Word is a big contender going forward, you have to be playing something like a Shatter Storm or maybe even a pile of Ancient Grudges, that type effect, in order to beat it. Maybe even Crows and Grip, just because, man, that matchup's rough. But I played very few matches with Is It Phoenix before the tournament. Kind of just relied on talking to Andy, having watched him play, and man, that deck's powerful. I did a lot of 6 power on turn 2. A lot of flipping a thing in the ice on turn 3 and bringing some Phoenixes back. It's just really incredible. The first time I cast a Gut Shot on a Noble Hierarch, I was sold.
And friend of both of yours, Andy's best friend, Kel Thompson, former Nationals champion, went all the way with top 8 with the same deck. And it was interesting to see. I was sweating in top 8. He ended up winning against a turns deck that I think extracted his Phoenix. But every time they got extracted, you could see like Kale's body language. He's just like, and like
Kale frowns even more when they get extracted.
Yeah. Was it top 4? Top 4 against the eventual winner. It was like game 3. He already has a Phoenix in hand. I think the end of turn thought scours 2 more Phoenixes, and then it's like the guy's like surgical extraction, and the guy cheering for the winner, Michael Rapp, they're all like, oh, in the back going nuts, while Kale's like, oh, and then ended up losing. So it's interesting you mentioned the Word deck. Of course, that ended up finishing second, and it was the only loss of for Michael Rapp, the winner who was on Grixis Death Shadow. And what I think about the Word deck is just and how we always talk about how Modern is a matchup thing. Like it beats Is It Phoenix, like you said, Elliot, and then when it played against Andrew Novarai in the top 4, Scape Shift, when you have like a main deck Witchbane Orb that Andrew could not answer, that just felt like horrible. I don't know, post sideboard, some people think it's pretty good if you're bringing in Ancient Grudges and other artifact removal, but Jackson Flanagan, was it, Andy, ended up blocking Andrew. I felt pretty early. It felt like he just locked him, and that was game. And so, do you know what that prison deck actually loses to?
It loses to like counter spells. It basically
Cryptic
can't
Command,
be. Yeah.
Cryptic Command on Shadowstorm. 2 cards.
Do people even play that?
I mean,
No.
the insane people that are still playing Jeskai obviously play those cards. I mean, I don't think it's good against Death Shadow, and I don't know how good it is against Tron when Tron has a like average or above average draw.
The matchup against Tron is actually pretty good for War here between Chalice 1, which is very good, Ghost Quarter, and what's it called? Crucible of the Worlds, and various Pit and Needle and Spyglass effects. It's actually hard for Tron to get online and get going.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that. I just thought about like the lock pieces, like if you resolve a Karn before they resolve, but That's interesting. I didn't think about that. I think the word deck's very powerful. I watched some of it play, but I definitely think it's weak to Shadow, which has a quick clock and interaction. Like Shadow is one of KCI's worst matchups for that exact reason. They just had a main deck hate against, like, it went with their game plan. It wasn't even main deck hate. Like, that's just what they're trying to do. So I'm not surprised that Shadow player beat them in the finals.
Yeah. In the final, the opponent was afraid. Jackson, even though he beat him in the Swiss, from the conversation before the match, just hearing him talk with his friends, like he wasn't especially confident in that matchup. Go ahead, Elliot.
Well, I was just going to mention that I think part of the reason that the Death Shadow matchup might not be as bad for Whir as Death Shadow beat up on KCI is just the fact that if you manage to land a Chalice on one, that's going to shut down a huge portion of the Death Shadow deck. And people tend to be moving away from Colgan's command from what I've seen, even when KCI was a big deck. So, it's possible you can kind of just get a free win that way, maybe even turn one on the play with a combination of Tormod's Crypts and stuff like that. Deck also plays Mishra's Bauble. You can actually get a Mox Opal online on turn one. But I mean, shout outs to Jackson. I know him pretty well. He's from, sort of close to Kingston. I don't even want to say like strong up and coming player because I think this is going to be like his third or fourth Pro Tour, and he's pretty young. So shout outs to him coming second.
Yeah, I think it's his fourth Pro Tour, and he's 19 years old. He's very, very good.
All right. I've been waiting to hear names like that. I mean, tired of just saying Edgar all the time. So Jackson, 19-year-old kid. Look forward to seeing what he does next. John, is Whir something you would play since you play all these funky decks, or is that not in your wheelhouse?
Look, I play a lot of combo, but if the deck's powerful enough, I'm willing to learn anything. Stylistically, I think Prism's something that I might want to play if it's strong enough here, and I think 4-color Whir really is where you want to be. I've always looked at it at a macro level, and I've said that the best ensnaring bridge shell or the best Chalice of the Void shell is going to be in a very good spot right now. And I've looked at Sun and Moon, I've looked at the Mono Red Prison, and I've looked at this Whir shell, and I think it's very well positioned right now. But I think that I have to stress that it's probably not stylistically for everyone. Not everyone's going to want to win by milling people with the Ipni Rivulet of Sadness 8 times in a row or something like that. So, but it's strong enough. I definitely consider it if I think it's far and away the best card. But it does lose to the singular card Shatterstorm, which I don't think is hard for decks make the change up. So I don't know.
I actually spoke to Jackson after the tournament and kind of mentioned what I was thinking about Shatterstorm, and he said that with the Whir deck being able to board in Psy Master Thopter, it just has the potential to kill relatively fast in post-board games. And when I played against in the top 8 of the PTQ, I left in my Lightning Axe and left in my Flame Slash, but between Chalice on one and the Psy, even if I had a card like Shatterstorm in my deck, it was not going to be fast enough. I think they killed me on turn 9, which for a prison deck's very quick. So with the Chalice shutting off my cantrips, it's not like Shatterstorm was reasonable for me to have. So he might be onto something there. Someone mentioned Crows and Grip. I don't know if that's the best way to fight it, since they often have multiple permanents that you direly need to get rid of. But I mean, not to knock Shatterstorm. I think it's definitely the best option. Whether it's lights out for the deck, I don't think so.
That's a fair point there, Elliot. And I do think Psy is not nearly as good here as it was in KCI, where you could cycle a bunch of cards and act as an engine as well. But yeah, your point is definitely valid. I also know that they run various Tezzerets, and I know for Lantern, Tron used to be the abysmal matchup, and the way they try to win was get a really fast Tezzeret going, and just try to beat a Shatterstorm, rush them down on turn 4 or 5 with Mox Opal. So that's also a consideration, and yeah, maybe it's not as easy in theory to rush them down with a Shatterstorm like that.
All right, let's go to your weekend, Derek. Explain all the chainmail images of you online that people can find and people were loving.
So I'm in like a group hangout, Google chat with Edgar and Dilks and some of the local like Toronto, Burlington, Hamilton area guys. And they're friends with you may have seen them, the third in their SCG events, Daryl Ayers. Daryl was staying at Edgar's for the weekend, and we were watching Edgar play a match of Amulet on Google Hangouts, and he turns off screen sharing and shows Daryl sitting in the background of his computer room wearing this chainmail with a chainmail hat just for no reason, just like hanging out. We're all like, what's going on? And somebody asked him how much it would cost him to wear it all weekend. He said, I probably wouldn't wear it. It's pretty heavy and uncomfortable. So I said in the background, oh, I'll wear it. And somebody else responded, we're not going to pay you money for something that you would probably already do. There's no reason for us to do that. I'm like, oh, okay. A couple of minutes goes by and Daryl goes, actually, what is the cost? I'm like, oh, I don't know, $200? He's like, okay. You have to wear it the entire time you're in the convention hall. Both days. You can take it off when you leave, like at dinner or whatever. If you manage to renege on our agreement, you can and take off the vest. You have to only wear the hat, but we'll pay for your dinner. I'm like, okay, sounds good. And then all of a sudden, he just starts asking people who wants to pitch $20. So eventually, they just got 10 people to pitch $20, and I was now wearing a chainmail all weekend for $200. As for the event, I played Burn, and I wasn't fortunate enough to be able to play in the PTQ on the Friday because I'm fortunate enough to always already be queued for the Pro Tour, humble brag. So I registered Burn for the main event, and unlike Elliot, I did not learn my lesson like he did and proceeded to get crushed by decks that should have beat me because that's what they're designed to do. I played against humans with 2 Oriok champions and play one game. I played against Dredge where they revealed a bunch of crippling chills and I felt like I couldn't win. And then I lost against Jund where there's like a 2 or 3 turn window where if I drew any spell, I won the game. But in Burn fashion, you drew one too many lands and you just lose. So my tournament did not go well. My weekend went great. The great thing about Magic the Gathering events is more often than not, they're more about the gathering and not much about the magic. After dinner events or after event dinners are always nice, and it's always nice to see other friends do well in top 8s and top 16s and top 32s. So overall, the weekend was well. I got to wear some sweet chainmail and I made some decent money out of it. Although I am very washed when it comes to paper Magic. Only can win online events, it seems.
Burn didn't. I think some people were commenting Burn was a good part of the field in the qualifier, and I imagine Burn was quite present in the tournament itself, but none of it ended up making top 8, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think Burn got better, but Burn is still Burn. It didn't get enough better.
When I was trying to prepare for this event, I really wanted to stay away from the modern problem that is good matchup, bad matchup. And I was like, oh, Burn is just Burn. It doesn't care what it's playing against. No, that is the exact opposite. Burn cares so much more than like almost any other deck in the format. And I just picked the wrong deck. Like I should have played Tron. Like I should have played Phoenix. I literally could have played any other deck and just probably had a better result. But
yeah, I think like Tron, you're just like, you just try to assemble and cast. I think
the Burn did a pretty good power level upgrade with the Skewer and the light up the stage. But like my opinion is that power level is never going to be broken enough to be the definitive best deck, and it's easily hateable. So it's always just going to be tier 1 fun police, but nothing more. Like it's never going to be a tiered 0 deck. And like I've seen more Leyline of Sanctities and like Kitchen Finks and even like Rest for the Weary and Feed the Clan and all that. So that's people came prepared, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's a good point in that burn will never be broken. When there are a lot of decks in Modern doing very broken things, and you're choosing to cast Lightning Bolt. And I don't think I'd ever come to a point in my career where casting Lightning Bolt is not good enough. But I think casting Lightning Bolt is usually not good enough. You have to be doing something else, whether it be turn 3 Karn or 4 Phoenix at your dome or flip Thing in the Ice, wrath your board, attack you for 7. Maybe it's Ensnaring Bridge, you can't attack. We're going to play this game where I mill you out for a couple turns. Maybe it's I have a 1-mana 9/9. You can't cast any spells, sort of thing, right? I don't think burn is where it's at.
Oh, after the tournament, talking to some people, they commented on the lack of pros up top, and noticeably there weren't any players that I really noticed. Not that many, not more than maybe, probably even less than a handful that I would consider like pros that I would recognize from, like, let's say the SCG circuit or knowing from the Pro Tour or previous GP performances. We had Lucas Xiao as like the biggest known name in the top 8, local Toronto hero that seems to always do well, even though he's been busier than ever this year with his, I think not with his personal life and career life. I think he made a post and he hasn't been jamming as hard as he has, but again, he's been able to perform well once again this past weekend. And people have on Twitter commented on the lack of pros that participated in this event. And then some people think, MagicFest isn't really worth going to. Marcus Tebow had nothing to gain outside of cash for this tournament. So after this tournament, because obviously it's local to you guys, we're all sort of close to Toronto, it made sense for us to go. But what do you think about MagicFest as a whole? Andy, do you share these views that some of these people do, that they are less likely to go to them?
So like if trying to think if I'm less likely to go, probably not, to be honest. I kind of have the competitive drive again to try and do as well as I can. I feel like stacking up these near misses have kind of made me want to try to commit to the game a little bit more again and hopefully qualify. And I'm really going to try and take every shot I can to qualify for London, because I got 2 of my best friends qualified for this Pro Tour, and it's like a dream of mine to play on a Pro Tour with them. So we're gonna grind even harder. So for me, it's just like a lot of it's about the grind to qualify for a Pro Tour, and I don't like pro points have not really mattered to me my whole Magic life. I'll be honest; they've never actually done anything for me, which is unfortunate because that means I haven't done that well. But I think I'm still going to go to these things, and I think a lot of other people are as well. I'm considering going to I'm going to MagicFest Cleveland, and I'm considering just PTQing the whole time and not playing the GP.
I think we talked about that as the better play.
The PTQs are sort of soft, and going 5-0 is not that hard.
Do you know if these PTQs are for London still?
No, I don't.
Actually, yeah, I think the cutoff. Let me find it. Sorry, they did post a list on when the cutoff is, when the Grand Prix, which Grand Prix are feeding.
I know this is like a not problem, but like not being able to play PTQs is like a big part of my competitive. Like that's a big part of my competitive like filler when we're not playing GPs. So like I find myself not being able to do a lot of competitive things, not being able to play PTQs, but it's probably just like a personal problem. Not something I should complain. Cleveland is for London. Okay. Elliot posted in group chat. Okay. Yeah. I don't know.
Andy, did you feel like about the softness there? Did you think the main event was also softer due to less pros? Because, I looked at the field. I'm like, Andy could beat any of these guys easily.
Aw, you're so sweet, Car. I don't know, like maybe. I guess like I didn't play against any pros until almost the last round. Like I played against former Silver Pro Cale Thompson, but I dispatched him with ease. before his top 8. And then I played against Andrew Ellenbogen in the last round, and he spanked me. He spanked me with a deck that I thought I would absolutely crush. He was playing Affinity, and I was playing Arclight Phoenix.
Frenzied Affinity, apparently it's called.
Yeah.
It's called.
It sure was, and that card absolutely demolished me.
Jarvis, I think he had a great day 1 because he made day 2, but I guess he also ended up fizzling out towards the end. But yeah, those two are the ones that come to mind, people that I recognize that came up for Toronto. But Derek, I don't think it changes his thing. Going to be more online. Actually, how's the Mythic grinding if you're doing that?
I have not been. I don't know. I've been having this issue with Arena where you like buy into a deck, and there are certain decks that are just not good on Arena, and I think Sultai is one of them. And I just don't have the like card stock, like the rare cards or the mythic cards to like trade into another deck. And because there's no secondary market, I can't just like ship my like 40 mythic card Sultai deck into something else. So like I'm just pretty far removed from grinding on Arena because I actually think it's not worth the time, simply because the end goal is almost unattainable, and you sort of like get lost in the chaos of trying to figure out what works best. And I just don't want to invest any more money into it. It's not what I want to do. That's probably the easy answer, and definitely something I could do, but it's not what I want to do. So
could you elaborate, unless you said it already, why Sultai is not good online?
It's there's this large gap in players that are playing Magic Arena that are newer players and seasoned players. So I think that because there's a large gap in between those two groups, that you're gonna more than likely run into aggro decks or run into people who are just copying decks that they see on the internet. So if we look at the last couple, the last week in general, Alexander Hayne has gotten to #1 with Mono Blue. The Game Podcast has talked about Mono Blue on their podcast, and Mono Blue won the SCG, one of the SCGs. Blue White, the aggro deck that Andrew Ellenbogen and the Michigan guys have been tweeting and talking about, has also been very popular and stuck up in conversation a lot more. So when you have these people talking about these decks and tuning them, you're going to have a more refined aggro deck. It's very hard to play a mid-range deck in a field like this because that deck has to be tuned very specifically to beat the meta game. And you just can't really do that when A, I don't think the deck is as powerful as a lot of people are, and B, you're going to have really skewed metas because a lot of newer players are just going to play these aggro decks, whether they're good or not. So, like, I think naturally the Sultai deck is already behind given the circumstance. And I also think those aren't great matchups. So, like, playing a mid-range deck on Arena is exceptionally worse than it would be on Moto, because less people are probably going to play aggro, in my opinion. So, and like, there's best of one. With Nexus of Fate, it's really hard for a mid-range to beat anything in best of one. So you're basically secluded to playing best of 3. And then if you're playing best of 3, like, you can play anything random up until you get to Mythic. And then once you get to Mythic, you're probably playing a lot of aggro. So.
To keep with standard, John, you played a tournament and you also got your heart broken. And he got his heart broken a few times. Elliot as well, and then you as well. All these near misses. Tell us what tournament did you play and what happened?
So I was away out of country for 3 weeks, came back, knew I had a RPTQ to work towards, which is actually this weekend in Seattle. Haven't played Guild's Ravnica Allegiance standard, like, period. So naturally, I'm just going to pick net deck something that's aggressive and proactive. Watching Marcus skewer people with white aggro in Vegas, I naturally was kind of attracted towards that. So I played white blue weenies in the Magic Online PTQ. Started great. My first seven matches of blue white aggro. I went 7-0. I thought, even if I lose twice, I probably should have enough a good tiebreak, two good tiebreak breakers, and make it in top 8. Proceeded to get skewered by red aggro splashing green, and then lost the die roll and the just didn't have the best draws against the mirror. And I finished 7-2. I thought, hey, I was one of the two last 7-0s. I should be fine for the tiebreak. And of course, 2 7-2s made the top 8, and of course, I was the 9th place finisher. So a bit disappointing, but all in all, it was just a dry run for the RPTQ, and I never played a game with the white weenies deck, so could have been worse, I guess.
So what were your thoughts heading into the RPTQ?
I think it's in a pretty good spot here, especially given that, I expect the Seattle RPTQ crowd to be very internet savvy and net decky, and I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be picking up, Esper, and especially Blue, now that Star City and Alexander Haynes really put that in the spotlight. I'm honestly still not sure if the Blue splash is worth it, but I just can't get the control decks and the reclamation decks out of my mind. And so I think I'm going to be playing still be playing the white weenies deck with the blue splash. I might tech the deck a bit more to expect a bit more mirrors and mirror and the mono blue matchup, which means I might be playing more than one or two deputy of detention. But otherwise, I'm just probably going to be playing the stock white weenies list, except no Snubhorn Sentry, because I think the card is horrible. I feel like there's a herd mentality of everyone saying that, yeah, Snubhorn is an auto include, and every time I played it in my testing, it's way too slow. It's not going to attack before turn 4, and just not doing what I want. So I'm going to swap Snubhorn Sentries out for Healer Slots.
London is so it's for London, right? And your RPTQ is when is yours? The Montreal one is actually this weekend.
Oh, it's this weekend.
Oh, it's also this weekend. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think you talked to me last week. Were you going to have time to make some sort of guide?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do, for those who don't know, I'm very meticulous about my tournament prep. I map out all my sideboards. I map out all the matchups, etc. So I will bring something out for the First Strike Nation here.
Okay, the nation knows that you are extremely meticulous, and I know, having had to compile your guides. Elliot, are you going to be playing the LCQ? Man, I have to make sure you're qualified for Cleveland, and so you could play this Saturday.
Yeah, I'm playing the RPTQ. I qualified from the last one. I think I have it nailed down to 2 decks. I'm either going to play Mono Blue or Sultai, and I don't necessarily know what's going to drag me towards either decision. I think that Mono Blue is like very powerful, and I'm not sure if people will have arrived at the correct way to beat it. On the other hand, Sultai is a deck that's like very much my style, and I think it has a serviceable matchup against Mono Blue and is pretty good against Mono White, which is sort of like the default answer to Mono Blue. So those are my 2 options going in, and I'll probably decide at like 11 o'clock Saturday night. So going to be preparing a lot over the next few days, and fingers crossed I choose right.
All right. Andy, which one did you say you were going to play to try to get to London?
I believe I'm playing one on Magic Online March 10th.
Wow. Aren't the I've never played in the Magic Online RPTQs, but isn't there like a lot of people, and generally I know you said you couldn't play the real life one, but it's fairly lower.
You're cutting out.
Oh, I was just thinking, like, isn't the Magic Online PTQs generally lower EV than paper ones?
Oh yeah, but like if you consider the EV of traveling, then you could argue that it's similar. Like I could potentially maybe try and find a way to Montreal this weekend, but it's looking unlikely because I'm not sure what I would want to play, and I have not prepped as much with consideration that I can wait till after the Pro Tour to decide what I'm going to play. So I'm just going to do that. Just going to kind of take it a little seriously and just do it on Magic Online, even though I think the paper events are much softer. I think it'll be okay.
You know, I'd be pretty curious to, even though he's qualified, but I'd be curious to hear what our standard all-star Derek would play and play this weekend if we were playing.
It's like really difficult. I think that mono blue is the deck to beat right now. And if you're not playing that, you better have a really good reason not to play it. So to me, that would probably be white blue aggro or Sultai midrange, or sorry, Esper midrange. But like you'd probably have to cut the 2-drops, the ones that when they make a token when you play a multicolored spell just for removal. So you can put yourself in a better position, or even Thought Erasure, just so you can interact with them more game one. But to me, like, the mono blue deck is just in a very good position right now, and too many decks or too many people had adjusted their deck building to beat the Sultai deck. So we have to like sort of scale back and think about this, how to beat the mono blue deck while still trying to beat the Sultai deck, because people will still be playing that. So I think, like, if you're not playing mono blue, play a deck to beat it, and whether that be like have a reactive main board for mono blue and then sideboard into a more mid-rangey game, or like do the opposite, have a mid-rangey game one, hope to dodge mono blue, and then sideboard into like a more defensive or aggressive sideboard plan, and just do that accordingly.
Any last questions, John?
That just sounds like white weenies, or is it fixed to me, personally? Or Sultai that's tuned.
Yeah, I definitely think, like, even if you look at the last season, that's what Is It Phoenix was. You had the mono red deck early. You had the green black deck that naturally beat the mono red deck because of Wild Growth Walkers, and then there was like a 2 or 3 week period where this Is It Phoenix deck in standard just kind of ran rampant. And then you had this natural progression of this mono white deck crushing it just in time for the Pro Tour to happen, and it put like 6 copies in top 8. And I think that's what you're sort of seeing now. And I was having this discussion with some people the other day. I think there's this huge trend with the general hive mind of people, and the internet age we have of deck sharing, that people, like, you can predict meta games based on what top tier players playing what and who's producing sideboard guides. To me, I was talking to people last weekend before the SCG, and I said, you better prepare for mono blue, because there's going to be mono blue everywhere. Hayne and the Game Podcast are talking about it at this moment. It's going to be everywhere, and I think that's going to keep happening. And I think the blue-white deck's going to tick up in popularity also. So to me, like, Sultai isn't gone, but it's just not being tuned by somebody with a big name. So, yeah.
We're waiting for you to tune it.
I'm so far removed from like trying to play standard right now. I just not qualified for the Pro Tour. Don't have a reason to play PTQs. I don't know the Mox format. They moved it back 6 weeks. Just waiting for them to start announcing things. You know, like we're kind of in this weird gray area where you don't know what you should be doing as a competitive player. So,
well, we don't even know if PT London's standard or not. That's funny.
Right. We know nothing.
All right, let's get straight to some announcements. Well, this was one of the bigger ones, announcing pre-release Grand Prix at MagicFest London. So I'm just reading their CFB events post on Reddit. We're thrilled to announce the very first Grand Prix on a pre-release weekend featuring War of the Spark at MagicFest London. This is an unprecedented and extraordinary event leading to tons of questions, which we have tried to cover here. The MagicFest London Grand Prix is going to be very unique to give you the best chance to both play with hashtag MTG War early and qualify for day 2 of the Grand Prix. We are running 4 flights to qualify for day 2. There are 2 flights on Friday and 2 flights on Saturday. Each flight is 7 rounds, and every player with 18 points or better continues on to a combined day 2 on Sunday. Okay. And there's more, which you guys can go on Reddit to check out. But initial reaction was the negative reaction was from stores that have stores in London that rely on having pre-release and people to go to their store. And now this event will obviously take over, and everyone who originally planned to play a pre-release at their local store will obviously, most of them will make the trip there, just like how in Toronto, likely most stores were pretty, at least if they were specifically popular for Magic, were likely sort of dead compared to usual times this past weekend. I don't know if you guys have any takes on this. I'm going to start with John, just because.
I think it's kind of cool to see a limited event as a pre-release event, you know. And I realize that one of the negative points is that it does take away from the local pre-release. And I was gonna say, like, it was also gonna take away from like the pre-release players all over the world if they have to choose between coverage and playing their pre-release. But then I realized that they don't do coverage anymore, so that's not a problem. Yeah, so idea is cool, but like I know there are ramifications beyond that, and as usual, the communication and the timeliness of the communication do leave something to be desired, which it's been an ongoing theme for a while. So yeah, I think it's cool, but I don't think I personally understand like all the dominoes that's gonna fall as a result of this.
Okay, Andy, what about you? Do you think it's cool to have a pre-release GP?
Initial reaction was, yeah, this is hella cool. This is pretty interesting. We've never really seen this kind of thing before from my experience. Maybe it happened a long time ago, before my time in Magic, but I've never seen anything like this, and I think that in itself is awesome. But I then started to see some of the Twitter complaints about like the surrounding community in London and how this could really affect the LGS's pre-releases in like a wide area around London, and that obviously sucks. And I'm not sure how to have both happen and be okay with it. Maybe someone else has a better idea than I do, but I think the idea of a Grand Prix pre-release is pretty cool, and I like it. But once again, there are consequences that we don't really know the full ramifications of them yet.
Quickly scrolling through Reddit, there's another thread to all those upset with MagicFest London on pre-release weekend. Go support your LGS instead. Channel Fireball exists to make money and will happily host GPs on pre-release weekend. 1, at the expense of your LGS, and 2, and as long as they keep making money, please take a stand and support your LGS for pre-release and send a message that pre-release GPs should not be a thing. Pretty sure I would still go to the GP.
Isn't it WotC that decides these? Like, are we shooting a messenger here? Or no?
Man, John, you keep cutting in and out a bit, but we can make out what you said. I don't know if it's WotC or CFB that makes this decision, or if it's a joint thing at all. I don't know if the guys know more than I do. Maybe Elliot has some insider info, but I don't think so.
I mean, I would assume it's Wizards, but I don't know anything.
I mean, Derek, what's this idea? What do you think about this idea of a pre-release GP?
I think well, I have 3 things, I guess. First of all, I think this is cool. I think this is really neat. It's sad that it has to come at the expense of other pre-releases, in theory. Like, this hasn't happened for literal, like, I want to say 15 years that, like, I've known about, like, competitive GPs. Like, I've been playing GPs for almost 10 years now, and I didn't hear about this until, like, when David Root and Gabe Sang were playing competitively. Like, that's when last time I heard about these. if that's exactly what they were. I don't even know. The other thing is like, this is all just like people being afraid or like really concerned, right? Like, I don't think GPs really steal that many people away from, like, at a GP. I don't know if many people, if it was like an ultimatum, like go to your local game store or go to the GP for one weekend, like I don't know if it would matter that much. Like most people would probably just go to their game store, right? And to add to this point, my second point is I think this really shows what Wizards and Channel Fireball are trying to do here, and that's separate the casual crowd from the competitive crowd by doing this and trying, like, this is something that probably should have been happening years ago. And I think even before Magic really blew up, this is what was happening. When Brian Kibler won his GP in Toronto, I think it was 15, 20 years, some long time ago, there's less people in that GP than we had in our largest PTQ in Toronto, which was around 415 people. So that means that people who are only going to the GP to win were probably playing in this GP, right? Like obviously Magic was much smaller, but not like 400 people in the GTA size, right? Like Magic's always been pretty big in this area. I think people were just only going to it because they thought they could win. Whereas you go to a GP now and everybody's just in it. You talk to your round 5 opponent, they're like, oh yeah, it was local to me and I don't play Magic in competitive sense that much. I'm just here to have fun. At the GP on the weekend, I talked to at least 3 or 4 people and they didn't know if they were going to make day 2. They didn't have plans for making day 2. They were just there to have fun and maybe make day 2. To me, that's insane. I think those are the people that like shouldn't be in the GP, so to speak, right? They should be playing pre-release at their local shop. I think there's a dissonance, I guess, between like where those people should be playing and where they are playing, and I think this is the first step in that separation. My third point I want to make is that I think the way Channel Fireball executed this announcement was awful. Like this is so disgustingly awful. It's blowing me away. Why would you post it on Reddit? You have a website. Why would you do this? You know, like why would you not post the article of your website on Reddit and then answer questions on Reddit and your website? When I've had people ask me like, where did you see this info? It's like, oh, it's on Reddit. People who don't know how to use Reddit can't find this info. People who know how to use Reddit have to sift through all these comments in order to like find this information, right? It's just like I get that it's more open to people and it's easier for them to answer comments, but like maybe you should work on your communication when you're handling a multi-million-dollar company and put it on your website or something. You know, it's like I have so many issues on that front. I don't think the actual execution of the GP is going to affect pre-releases that much, but I could see how it could be very annoying also.
Wow, that was awesome. We're getting close to wrapping up the show, and just want John to comment on one Kale Thompson, man, in the chat. I love you, Kale, for chiming in. I was really cheering for you in top 8, top 4, and once people started cheering over the surgical extraction, I'm like, oh man, our boy's dead. He says mono white is unbeatable and best of 1 and pretty cheap. It's not real Magic though, so I don't know if it'll do what you want it to. Hey, so maybe it shouldn't be mono blue. Maybe it should be mono white. Everyone should be like playing on Arena and trying to grind through. John, what do you think about that? Oh, Andy?
Well, the main deck is mono white, so for best of 1, it might as well get those blue lands out of your goddamn deck. So.
All right. What's one thing I want? Okay, yeah. Okay, so this past weekend, we got Face was kind enough to, ship me to Toronto, and do sort of pseudo coverage, trying to do. Couldn't do much without, like, let's say the access of deck lists and that CFB had. So had to do some stuff like that were outside the usual and try to make it interesting. The feedback was good on Facebook, whether it be for the play for profiles that we did or the interviews that my partner in crime, Miles, or Milo, as he's known online, did, where he interviewed a fellow YouTuber, where he interviewed an artist, and I interviewed Andy was one of them, and other people. So it made for interesting content that people liked, and also got a ton of feedback on Twitter for that. So really happy about that. And if you guys want to check it out, it's all on magic.facetofacegames.com. And yeah, I still don't really know. I'm not, obviously we didn't do it to be like, hey, Watsy, look what this random guy could do on his own. It was more just to do it and see what people would like. And yeah, again, I don't really know how I feel about there being coverage or not, just because on a smaller scale, we get tons of messages, and I get personal messages or emails about why we're not streaming the face-to-face game series. And we had at some point some of the Toronto ones, but honestly, they're just too small, and the people that would be interested in watching are usually already at the event, or there's just too many other streams to compete with. It just wouldn't make sense to invest that type of money to stream this event. Maybe at some point it will be, but it hasn't been, and it won't be in the short term. So I do know people just want coverage, and some people probably want for the sake of wanting it. It's just like people telling other people to stream, even though they don't want to watch it. They just want people to do it. But here, I could understand it. It's a different situation because there's proof of thousands of listeners tuning in at the GP. So it's a completely different situation where they already know the type of audience that they could draw. And we're just, I guess, confused as to why they wouldn't want that audience to. And to outsiders, it just seems like a no-brainer idea to help grow the game. But maybe we just don't know all the actual costs of the setup and of the people that they had to fly in. And when you think about how many MagicFests there are now in a year, if that is actually going towards something else, then I mean that'd be fine with me. I don't know. Any last things before we get out of here?
I just want to say that about the coverage thing. With Magic moving towards esports, I think this is something that was going to happen eventually, and I think it looks really stupid, but I feel like it's part of a big picture, even though it's communicated incredibly poorly. I think that people should be taking up their issue with the communication and not necessarily the way it is executed. I've been talking with Keith a lot. Keith works at the Score, the esports Score. I can't remember the actual name of it. Part in Toronto, and he was saying that most other esports, like, they don't have that much coverage, and this opens up more area for third parties to run things also, which brings in more sponsorships, which brings in more money for people to spend on the game and invest in the game. And then you'll get players wearing jerseys and have them with maybe they'll be sponsored by Pepsi or Coca-Cola eventually, right? Like, Wizards doing all of this cost themselves really takes away from other things that they want to be doing. And it looks really stupid, but that's only because they've been doing it for so long. I think give it 2 years and it'll look much better. But I think it's more of a communications issue than a execution issue. Like, hopefully Channel Fireball picks it up. I don't know.
I mean, they're in alpha. They have coverage at channelfireball.com, and I think they're either slowly or they have brought back some of the people that were on the coverage team. I got to see Corbin this past weekend, who has done coverage for Watsy in the past, and he's part of I assume the official Channel Fall coverage team. And he tried his best. He took a lot of pictures, videos, put them on CFB, and of course, the initial Twitter response for some of these troll accounts are like, we don't want this crap. We want real coverage, dude. Tough crowd,
Yeah.
tough crowd.
I mean, like, obviously it takes time, and I feel like Channel Fireball definitely got the short end of this stick. And if they are also, I assume, a multi-million-dollar company. If they had more time to figure out how to allocate people, allocate expenses, allocate just planning in general to do this, it would be better. I know when they originally said they were going to try to take it over, they would only do text coverage because, like, it would just cost thousands of dollars to invest in video equipment in such a short period of time and try to get it perfect. Like, people are always going to complain or whatever, right? I'm sure they're doing a good job based on the circumstance, but the circumstance are obviously awful. It comes down to just communication again. And I just can't get over how much is being botched just week after week after week after week.
Yeah,
John.
Yeah, I think I agree with the. I think Derek makes some good points here, and I'm just a bit amused at the transition and the execution. I think, like, it seemed very abrupt, and all these, like, freelance reporters, etc., like Corbin Hostler being free agent and then immediately jumping back in. It didn't really feel smooth to me, and I don't know if everyone saw this, but there was a Patrick Sullivan Twitter responding to the announcement that's just like, hey, it was pretty cool that you guys tried to hire me 2 months ago to do coverage. I'm just like thinking, like, what is going on here? Like, was it this abrupt? Like, was there any foresight and planning? Like, I don't know what the hell is going on. Like, what happened?
I have a theory that has a little bit of background knowledge, talking with some people in the community, that they didn't understand how big Arena was going to be. They launched it and just had no, like, understanding that it was going to blow up like this. And so, in my opinion, I think what happened was they got a team together. The team said, you got to push this because you're gonna miss it, or it's gonna fall. And they have a budget built already, and they have investors. And so they basically said, we can't find a way to fund this in such a short amount of time. We have to launch this esports thing for $10 million to try to hype up our game, do a bunch of partnerships with Twitch and work on that, and try to start cutting costs up to other places, so we aren't just losing money for the first little bit, so we can still make it look good on our balance sheets. And that way, in a couple of years, it'll recoup all the costs that we may have lost, which I don't think they will. But more importantly, they'll gain a lot more viewership on the front end from Twitch, from new players playing their new game, compared to, like, losing players on the back end, because I think the players that they're gaining from Arena and Twitch are substantially, like, exponentially higher than the ones that they could be losing right now. And I think that this is a move that they made without putting a lot of thought into necessarily, but to me, it's one that I think has been proven in other esports that like, this is a good move for them to make money, for them to grow their game. And as many Magic players have complained, I don't think many other people see it this way. So to me, they're just cutting costs in small places to do that. It's not factual. That's just my opinion based on some information I've gotten from some other people. But that is what makes the most sense, because it's obviously very rushed, right? It just doesn't make a logical sense that a multi-million-dollar company would just do this and not have, like, an exit plan or even an entrance plan. It just doesn't make sense, right?
Kind of makes sense. And if I remember correctly, the first phase of Arena, people weren't receiving it very well, and people were saying doom and gloom about Artifact and how Artifact was going to eat into Magic Arena, and Arena had no chance. And obviously, history has proven otherwise. So maybe it's really overperformed expectations. I don't know. Could be it.
I honestly believe that they had no idea how big it was going to be. I just, based on the way that Moto's been handled and how they've completely overhauled all of their marketing, all of their the way they're handling just everything to do with Arena, whether it be on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I just think they just hired a bunch of, they're just like, oh, we're getting a bunch of feedback. Let's hire a bunch of new teams and try to blow this up as big as we can. So.
Right. And that does it for this show. Okay. For Andy, Derek, Elliot, and John. And me, we thank you for watching. We thank you for tuning in, for listening. It's a sports show. Like the YouTube channel video, subscribe to our show on podcast. Go to patreon.com/firststrike. That's where we'll be releasing John's guide for mono white shortly. Yeah, we'll talk about our PTQ success next week and other news and announcement that Wizards is sure to make, because we're still missing a lot of info. So hopefully Elliot gets there at his RPTQ, and hopefully John gets there at his RPTQ this week. And hope Derek finds the love to grind again. So we will see you next time, boys and girls. Ciao.